Good day, everyone. We are the first group. I am Angel together with Mark, and today we are here to tackle the first reading, Chapter 1, about ethics of Peter Singer's Practical Ethics. Before diving in, surely we're to ask, who is Peter Singer?
So, who is Peter Singer? Peter Singer is a renowned Australian philosopher and ethicist known for his groundbreaking work in the fields of ethics, animal rights, and effective altruism. Born on July 6, 1946, in Melbourne, Australia, Singer studied at the University of Melbourne and proceeded to Oxford, where he then after has made significant contributions to contemporary moral philosophy. Our rationalist philosopher currently holds a prominent position as a professor at the University Center for Human Values of Princeton University, and he has made well-known and acclaimed books like Animal Liberation Now. But our focus today will be on his Anglo-American stance on utilitarianism from his very own book, Practical Ethics. Now, ethics is a timely discussion that revolves on what may be seen as good or not. But with how Singer sees it, we must first tackle what ethics is not, to then figure out what it is. So, what is ethics not?
The first one is ethics is not primarily about sex. Ethics or moral philosophy has a long history of being associated with a narrow focus on sexual matters. Morality was often viewed as a system of puritanical prohibitions, primarily aimed at curtailing people's enjoyment and fun. Back in the 1950s, if you came across headlines about declining moral standards, they often focused on topics like promiscuity, homosexuality, and pornography. Fortunately, times have changed. Today, our understanding of ethics has expanded. Morality now encompasses broader and more pressing concerns such as global poverty and climate change. While decisions about sex can involve ethical considerations like honesty and concern for others, similar ethical principles apply to various aspects of our lives, like driving a car, which has more significant implications for our environment and safety. Therefore, this book does not dwell on sexual morality but explores the broader and more critical ethical issues of our time. Given this broader perspective on ethics and the pressing global challenges we face, this book does not engage in discussions of sexual morality. Instead, it seeks to delve into more critical ethical issues that demand our attention and consideration. Issues like global poverty, climate change, and the other complex moral dilemmas that have far-reaching implications for our world take center stage in our exploration of practical ethics.
The second assumption of what ethics is not is that ethics is not good in theory, but not in practice. An ethical judgment that is no good in practice must suffer from a theoretical defect as well. For the whole point of ethical judgment is to guide practice. Well, this simply does not hold true because ethics strives to guide our judgment to produce the correct practices, right? It's not a question yes or no's can answer because there are times that it is ethically correct to do things even when unethical and vice versa. But this is given the circumstances. Bottom line is, there are these complexities that have different interpretations which give us different theories like utilitarianism, where it is a concept that weighs how much or how good something does in terms of happiness. The failure of an ethic of simple rules must not also be taken as a failure of ethics as a whole. Now, this bullet, we've heard people say simplicity is beauty. Yes, we agree that being simple makes it straightforward. But simplicity in our case, in ethics, does not foster how ethics can be applied in a multitude of perspectives. Imagine if our world was led by simple rules like do not lie, do not steal, and do not kill. These rules exist, but can this lead to think that ethics is not suitable for dealing? This can lead to people not thinking that ethics is suitable for dealing with the complexities of real world situations. For example, you cover up for your brother's mistake because he breaks the vase, meaning you've lied to keep him from punishment. Is lying unethical? Lying is not ethical. But was your reason ethical? In a sense, it was. You wanted to protect your brother from the punishment, which is why you covered up for him. The passage wants to make it clear that when people break simple rules fail, it does not mean that ethics as a whole is a failure. Instead, it is a problem that, with one specific way or another, can be dealt with in ethics.
The third assumption is that ethics is not based on religion. Singer treats ethics as entirely independent of religion, advocating for a separation between the two realms. While some argue that morality is derived from divine approval, this perspective faces logical challenges. For instance, if actions are good only because God approves of them, it makes morality arbitrary. Historically, religion offered incentives like heaven for the virtuous and threats of hell for the unethical as motivation for ethical behavior. However, not all religious thinkers agreed with this self-interested motivation. For instance, Immanuel Kant, a pious Christian, believed that we must obey the moral law for its own sake, irrespective of self-interest. Instead, ethics has evolved alongside human development, shaped by our social nature. We share moral intuitions with our primate relatives, like reciprocity and a sense of justice. These intuitions have been refined through language and cultural influences. However, it's crucial to recognize that our evolved intuitions don't always provide the right answers to modern dilemmas. The argument that something is natural doesn't necessarily make it morally right. Human interference with nature has led to positive advancements like medicine. Understanding the origins of morality allows us to critically assess our intuitions and adapt them to the complex challenges of today's world.
Ethics is not relative to the society with which we live in. This assumption is a rather tricky one now, because we have for so long been taught ideas that did not focus on a global perception of humanity, but instead of a local one. So, what does this mean? Going to the first point, the idea that ethics is related to the society one happens to live in is true in one sense and false in another. This goes to saying that traditions and beliefs are not absolute and vary from place to place. It is ethical to eat beef here in the Philippines as an example, but is it ethical to eat beef in India specifically for the Hindi people? As seen in consequentialism, the second point says that actions that are right in one situation because of their good consequences may be wrong in another situation because of their bad consequences. This concept is rather interesting because you do not do things or you do things and then you are not judged for them or for your actions, but because of the outcomes, the consequences that come along with it. Let's use another example for this. Let's say you trespassed into someone's property. You see the owner having seizures in their backyard and then call the ambulance, saving his life. You're good in consequential grounds because you saved his life. But was it ethical for you to trespass regardless of whether you saved his life or not? I'll have you answer that. Third point, no moral judgment can do more than reflect the customs of the society with which it is made. This is what I meant when I said that we have been taught local ideas of being a nation, a people. We reflect on how our country or group, in an individual case, teach us on what we should value more. Should we value humanity more in a universalist sense? Or should we value our countrymen more in the sense that they were the ones who gave birth and raised me or you, right? Moving to our fourth point, anyone who has thought about a difficult ethical decision knows that being told what society thinks we ought to do does not settle the quandary. Quandary meaning an argument. So let's face it, society cannot dictate our decisions, especially when moral accountability is involved. Imposing those beliefs on when you yourself has to make the decision will, to some extent, mold your decisions and sway what you think is best. But the decisive body will still be you and you alone. So it will not settle how you choose to believe. You must give your action or decide for yourself on what these moral actions must be. Which is why, to the next point, the view that ethics is and can only be relative to a particular society has most implausible consequences. This is not possible because, given how Singer's first point of ideology, ethics is being relative to societies, does not mean that it is true across the board. Going back, societies have different norms, they have different traditions, they have different cultures. This does not apply to every single one. Their thought process on ethics may be different to other cultures, which may have perspectives that will not meet in the middle and may have some disparities. Let's have an example to going back to eating beef. You will disrespect the Hindi religion and the customs people have set in India for doing this, but it will not have the same consequences here in the Philippines because they have different laws, different customs, different beliefs, different norms in India. Same goes with the Philippines, where it is perfectly safe to eat beef. And then lastly, the relativist cannot satisfactorily account for the nonconformist. What morals do you hold? Of your group, your country, or of the world? Our relativist holds the moral values based on their cultures and societies, not of the world. This is not of the nonconformist. This is not what Peter Singer believes in because he, as a nonconformist, will instead of basing off of cultures, will base off of rational and logical understanding on what ethics is for the entire humanity, for the entire world in that sense. A universalist perspective or approach to include everyone in that sense of ethics that some cultures may not include. Bottom line is that ethics cannot and should not be gatekept by societies or cultures. Universal is the way, the truth, the life.
The fifth assumption of what ethics is not is that ethics is not merely a matter of subjective taste or opinion. Ethics isn't just a matter of subjective taste or personal opinion. While ethical subjectivism suggests that moral judgments depend on individual approval or disapproval, it faces a challenge in explaining ethical disagreements. If I say cruelty to animals is wrong because I disapprove it, and you say it's not wrong because you don't disapprove, both statements can be simultaneously true, leaving no room for productive debate. However, alternative theories within subjectivism offer more nuanced perspectives. For instance, emotivism suggests that ethical judgments express emotional attitudes. This theory concludes that ethical disagreements arise because people aim to influence others' attitudes through their expressions of moral judgment. In universal prescriptivism, according to this view, ethical judgments are prescriptions related to what individuals care about. Disagreements in ethics can be attributed to varying concerns and values. Another view, which is the error theory, presented by G.L. Mackie, acknowledges the appearance of objective moral standards, but this theory suggests that these features result from error or misconceptions. This could be due to historical beliefs or our tendency to objectify personal preferences. These theories don't deny the role of reason and argument in ethics. They acknowledge the ethical reasoning is possible even without the belief in objective ethical facts. To establish a solid foundation for practical ethics, it's essential to demonstrate that ethical reasoning is viable. While practical examples in this book will illustrate this, it's important to delve into foundations of ethical reasoning to understand how it operates both theoretically and practically. And now let's dive into what ethics is in one view. To determine who lives by ethical standards and who does not, we must consider two important distinctions. The first distinction involves whether someone is living in alignment with what they personally believe. to be the correct ethical standards, or if they are following standards they perceived as mistaken. This recognizes that people may have diverse ethical beliefs, and adherence to these beliefs defines their ethical stance. The second distinction is between those who adhere to some form of ethical standards, regardless of their alignment with conventional norms, and those who live without any ethical standards at all. Even individuals with unconventional or unique ethical beliefs are still considered to be living by ethical standards if they genuinely believe that their actions are morally right based on their own reasoning or principles. In essence, these distinctions help us recognize the diverse ethical landscapes that people inhabit, ranging from conventional ethical systems to unconventional yet sincerely held personal moral codes.
Now, Peter Singer argues that since the ancient times, ethics has had standards it complies to, a justification to why it must be. Hence, different characterizations of ethics from the past to the present have significantly pointed out what characteristics entail ethical conduct, which can be focused into actually one recurring concept that applies throughout all of them: universality. So, what are these ideas? Well, to start, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The first point, familiar? That's the golden rule, attributed to Moses and reiterated by Jesus in the Bible. Respect others, and you will be respected. Do them good or bad, and they will do the same to you. It's kind of reflective ethics, if I were to coin the term. Next come the Stoics from the Roman era that derive ethics from the universal natural law. Immanuel Kant then developed this into his famous formula, act only that maxim, through which you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. This is then supplemented by R.M. Hare, who saw universalizability as a logical feature of moral judgments. By that, it should be applicable to all so that there are equal grounds and no biases when it comes to deciphering if one's actions are ethical or not. Universal, still there. In the 18th century, British philosophers Hutcheson, Hume, and Adam Smith appealed to have an imaginary, impartial spectator, an entity that will act as the mediator of the sorts to test moral judgment. Now, moving to ethical perspectives, from a utilitarian point of view, according to Jeremy Bentham, it is crucial that when deciding about moral issues, each counts for one and none for more than one. You do not vote for someone else or get more say due to reputation or wealth. You only represent yourself alone. Nothing more, nothing less. John Rawls adds this to his own theory, stating that a veil of ignorance prevents people to see what they gain or lose from the principles they choose to accept. So it will be like a blindfolded game, and you decide your principles, you will later learn whether you gain or lose from what you've selected. So choose wisely. Bottom line is, all these link back to ethics as a universal concept, no matter how hard people try to associate it to their own cultures. There is no single group that can dispute that it may be bad or cause disparity because, in general, they're all acceptable across all, be it of different origins or native languages. They may have differences, yes, but these concepts, these definitions, these characterizations are outweighed by their link. And these characteristics by our renowned figures are also evidence of your ethical universality and the impact it may have to the world once understood.
Ethics is fundamentally rooted in a universal perspective, and this viewpoint can be summarized through several key principles. Equality of preferences. Ethics dictates that our own needs, wants, and desires should not receive special treatment simply because they are our own. In other words, our preferences do not inherently carry more weight than the desires of others. This principle emphasizes the equal consideration of everyone's interests. Equal weight to others. Ethical frameworks give the interests and well-being of others the same significance as our own. This means that we should not prioritize our own interests over those of others, recognizing that each individual's needs and desires are equally important. Maximizing overall well-being. Ethics guides us to choose actions that result in the best overall consequences for all parties involved. It encourages us to seek outcomes that, on balance, maximize well-being and minimize harm for everyone affected. The universality of ethical principles provides a strong foundation for adopting a broadly utilitarian perspective. Utilitarianism, a well-known ethical theory, aligns with these principles by promoting actions that lead to the greatest happiness for the greatest number. In essence, ethics from a universal standpoint urges us to make choices that prioritize the collective welfare and ensure fairness, rather than favoring our own interest or the interest of a select few.
As Singer has said, a lot of people have failed to define ethics into one formal definition because of how wide its scope can reach. From the number of ethical theories to even irreconcilable ones, the definition must give justice to all of them. Which is why instead of doing so, our author proposes to have a baseline universal theory instead for ethics that can act as a foundation, a basis with which we can lean over to start at a broadly utilitarian position. Moving beyond utilitarianism must have tantamount justification to do so. But why does he suggest this? Well, simply because our wants and needs cannot be of someone else's. These wants, needs, desires, to refer to them as preferences, must be extended to the preference of others. Understanding this, let's delve into his example. When he finds a fruit tree, he is given two decisions to choose: whether to eat all the fruits for himself or share it with other people. Given that he does not have any idea of what ethics or the likes are, how will he choose? So think about it. If somebody who has found a fruit tree does not have any ethics, what will he do? Given he does not know ethics, yeah. He may enjoy it and feel full laughter, but when he has the ethical conscience, he thinks that others may be hungry and may enjoy the fruit too, which he can choose to share if he feels like it. This is then this is where it gets you to weigh not only your but the other's preferences as well. This must be done without having one's outweigh the others to maximize everyone's preferences. This in turn will generate the best consequences for everyone while in balance. So we should note that we should weigh each other's preferences, not only mine, not only yours, but everyone's, to help benefit the community, to help benefit everyone, all the stakeholders that will be involved when you do or when you take action into this kind of, into anything, actually. But it has to be balanced as well. Because as nice as it sounds, we must still be careful because not all actions at first glance may generate the best consequences. Emphasize on the best consequences because we'll go back to the example. If we share the fruits with everybody, do you think that those everyone will enjoy the fruit and continue to work hard? There's a possibility that if you give the fruit to everyone, some will just depend on you, rely on you, and not do any more work because they think that it's too much or they can already live with your sustenance. This is unethical because you're just being a slacker or you're leeching off somebody else's hard work. You may be alleviating the hunger in your community, but it also generates the dependency that they will have on you. And when that happens, who's going to be the short end of the stick? It's going to be you, right? This, ladies and gentlemen, is preference utilitarianism. It will it is far from the version of hedonism, which prioritizes or maximizes the pleasure or happiness of people and minimizes pain and unhappiness. But do not fret. If removed from misinterpretation, The hedonistic approach is actually quite similar, is very similar to the preference utilitarianism, where they both share or they both have impartiality and their interusability with ethical principles, etc., etc. However, remember, this is but a foundation, the grounds from where we can start ethical thinking and consideration. To go beyond preference utilitarianism, we should scrutinize the claim that the satisfaction of preferences should be our ultimate end. We must think critically on how to satisfy our preferences, where they are only acceptable given that we are, like in the second bullet, informed fully, calm in the mind, and thinking clearly. Preferences driven by desires and extremities only pave the way to desperate requests when truly you don't need it. And also, point three, the fact that we would abandon many of our preferences if we knew that their satisfaction would not bring us happiness shows that it is happiness we really care about, not the satisfaction of our preferences. We cannot ignore other perspectives just because Peter Singer said he prefers preference utilitarianism. This is why, although it will be serving as the baseline for our judgment on decisions, evaluating our stances with others can be a good way to cross-reference and think about how our idea of ethics can be any good from others, and if it can, how it will make us better from there on out. So to summarize, here are our 5 assumptions of what ethics is not about. Ethics is not, number one, primarily about sex. Number two, ethics is not good in theory but not in practice. Number three, ethics is not based on religion. Ethics, number four, is not relative to the society in which you live in, or relativism. And number five, ethics is not merely a matter of subjective taste or opinion, or subjectivism. And ethics is based on observation and is universal.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the fascinating world of ethics. We hope this exploration has been enlightening and thought-provoking. Goodbye for now, and may your ethical compass always guide you towards a better tomorrow.